James will actually be running through the findings of our latest Business Barometer survey. So that's the meaty bit, the exciting bit. But before that, I'm going to give a little bit of background to the survey, but also do a bit of awareness raising about something that we run called the Buckinghamshire Economic Intelligence Observatory. So firstly, a bit of a background about the Barometer survey, and I'm conscious that some of you will be regular respondents to the survey, and some may not have come across it previously. So I'll just give a bit of background to it, so you're all aware of the details. So it's Buckinghamshire's largest regular business survey. It essentially tracks local business confidence and performance. So we've got a regular set of questions that we ask each time, and we also ask views on different topical issues in the different surveys. The survey has been running since 2021. It started post-pandemic when it was a really challenging picture for many businesses, and we really wanted to understand all the different issues that were being faced. And it was so valuable, we've continued to run it regularly since then. So the survey is a joint piece of work. It's run collaboratively between Buckinghamshire Business First and Buckinghamshire Local Enterprise Partnership. We now run the survey twice a year. It's conducted online, and we get over 100 businesses complete the survey each time. So we get a really good number and really rich information. People decide whether or not to complete the survey. So from a sampling perspective, we can't say that the results are fully representative of all businesses in Buckinghamshire, and we don't weight the results from a statistical perspective. But saying that, we really value the surveys. It provides really rich information, and we use it in many ways, the two organisations, and predominantly to inform business support activity and to help advocate with local and national government on behalf of Buckinghamshire businesses. So, for example, with the Department for Business and Trade, we share the findings from the survey on a regular basis. So before we go into the results of the latest survey, I just did also want to say a few words about the Buckinghamshire Economic Intelligence Observatory. This is a website essentially that we run at the LEP. We set it up a couple of years ago, and it's one place to find all the latest data and insight about the Buckinghamshire economy. There's a huge amount of information on the site. We have everything from key statistics and news and blogs that we regularly update. So most weeks there's new content on the site. Most of the detailed information on the site is sits within 5 themes. So we have economic output and productivity, so the big picture stats and narrative about the state of the Buckinghamshire economy. We have a theme on business and innovation, a theme on jobs and skills, so what's happening within the labour market, information on population and infrastructure and energy. We try and make the information on the site as interesting as possible. So it's available in lots of different formats for different people's needs. So whether that's reports, interactive dashboards, or maps, for example. Just put a few screenshots on here. So this is a screenshot of the latest news and blogs. So we are publicising the results, or we're publicising this webinar. We also every month do a summary of what businesses in Buckinghamshire, what issues are being raised with Buckinghamshire Business First about doing business in Buckinghamshire. We summarise that information and share that once a month, and then other things as and when. So, for example, currently we have the latest data on apprenticeship take-up within the county in our news section. And I've just pulled out a few of the bits and bobs that maybe just to help illustrate what the type of information we have on the observatory site. So this is a map of firms we've identified as operating within Buckinghamshire's green economy. And when you click on this within the site, you can click on the individual businesses and it tells you who they are, their size, and what they do. So that's an example of a bit of some deeper research on a specific subject. And as I said, the site is ever evolving. There's new content most weeks. If this is something that you think it's useful to be aware of, you may at some point find information useful to submit for supporting funding bids or planning applications or whatever you might need some of this information for, or finding who is operating within certain sectors, that kind of thing. Do sign up for our mailing, do sign up to our mailing list. We send out updates every week or so, just saying what new content has been added to the site. So just pop your email address into the chat and I can add you to our mailing list. And also, we're really, really keen to evolve the site to meet the needs of all users. And so if there's anything you'd like to see added to the site, any analysis that you'd like us to undertake, please do let me know. That's it from me. I'm now going to hand over to James, who's going to talk you through the results of the latest barometer survey.
Thanks, Caroline. Great to meet you all. I guess we'll just go straight into the results. So with the barometer, there are a total of 112 Buckinghamshire businesses that responded to the Q4 2023 iteration of the barometer. While the majority were smaller businesses, as shown in the pie chart, the distribution of respondents by their size, so their number of employees that they have, is broadly representative of Buckinghamshire's business population. Also, just under 3/4 of respondents operate in the service sector, with the remainder operating in the non-service sector, which includes sectors such as agriculture, forestry, manufacturing, construction, and printing. So it has been 3 years since the first business barometer was conducted. At that time, back in 2021, trading conditions were reported to be in a poor state in Buckinghamshire, with almost 3/4 describing Buckinghamshire businesses describing it as worse than normal. Entered its third lockdown and the effects of the UK exiting the EU began to emerge. But over time, businesses reported improved trading conditions, with just under a quarter describing it as worse than normal at the beginning of 2022. However, the Russia-Ukraine conflict put the recovery on hold as supply chains experienced further disruption, and upticks in inflation and interest rates created a cost of living crisis. And these effects are still being felt as businesses try to adapt and deal with rising costs, creating a rather subdued end to 2023 trading conditions. So as you can see in the infographic, almost a third now say trading conditions are worse than normal, almost half saying they are about normal, and 17% saying they are better than normal. This picture is also further illustrated by the net balance scores. So these 6 net balance scores indicate how respondents have performed over the last 3 months. They are calculated by subtracting the percentage of firms reporting a decrease from the percentages that report an increase. So for example, if 15% of firms told us that their sales increased and 65% said their sales decreased, so the balance for the quarter would be 50%. And as you can see, the most extreme net balance score is for costs, which is currently at plus 84%, which is also a further rise from the plus 73% at the start of 2023. And while rising costs can be attributed to inflationary pressure and rising interest rates, staff wages too are also increasing for businesses, and are being exacerbated by the tight labour market, where the pool of skilled labour to recruit from has become smaller due to cumbersome immigration rules, for instance, but also more people being out of work due to long-term sickness as NHS waiting lists become longer. Rising costs have also translated into further reduced profits, which in the net balance score you can see is at minus 26%. And while the net balance scores for sales or custom, turnover, and workforce size are positive, they are lower than the net balance scores that were recorded at the beginning of 2023. And of concern is also the negative net balance score for the order book or pipeline indicator, which basically means that we can basically estimate that consumer demand might be rather subdued as we progress into 2024. And the backdrop of a tough business climate has brought added emphasis for relief measures in the autumn statement that was delivered back in November. And we wanted to ask your views on what the autumn statement announcements mean to you. And from the announcements, respondents anticipate that the greatest impacts to their business will be from the increase to the national minimum wage and the plans to increase corporation tax, which are expected to reduce competitiveness in export markets and also could lead to reduced staff numbers. And while the move to make full expensing permanent and the reduction in national insurance payments for self-employed was welcomed by respondents, there was an overall belief that the autumn statement lacked support for small businesses in particular. Other aspects that people felt the autumn statement lacked included long-term business rates relief and business rate reform, support for rising utility costs, VAT reform, planning reform, also changes to IR35, greater incentives to innovate, and also support for startups during an economic downturn. Respondents also mentioned long-term challenges that need to be addressed, including the commitment for greater commitment on climate change, also improvements in electrical grid supply and infrastructure, digital connectivity, and also a strategy on food production. And also a range of challenges are also expected to be encountered by Buckinghamshire businesses in the year ahead. The most commonly cited challenges by respondents were staff retention and recruitment, skills shortages, dealing with rising costs and maintaining cash flow, and also attracting new customers while retaining the existing customer base with added reference to managing client demands on limited budgets. And at the macro level, businesses are concerned by the challenge of navigating through ongoing economic uncertainty, market volatility, and supply chain disruption. Recognition was also given to shifts in consumer behavior and preferences, which will make adapting to evolving market trends and expansion into new markets more of a challenge. Then there's also the emergence of artificial intelligence, which is also expected to add further difficulty in businesses' ability to maintain their competitiveness, because smaller businesses in particular may not have the upfront capital and expertise to implement artificial intelligence effectively into their work streams compared to larger businesses with more resources, and therefore smaller businesses could be left behind compared to larger businesses. Mention was also given to the challenge of feeding valuable local small, medium business intelligence to the government in order to influence decision making and influence change. We also wanted to know from local businesses what is preventing their growth, and a range of key barriers were identified. However, the majority of respondents identified reduced customer demand linked to the cost of living crisis and the stagnant economy as the main barrier to growth. And consequently, competition has increased, which has led many respondents to highlight issues concerning their ability to market their goods and services effectively when their budgets are being constrained. Recruitment and retention of staff was also highlighted as a main barrier to growth, along with IR35 legislation again, also transport for staff. There's also an aging workforce, particularly for some businesses, electric grid capacity again, planning and procurement processes, and also supply chain disruption. Access to finance was also highlighted as an issue. And while this can be attributed to higher interest rates and the current economic situation not being conducive for business investment, fewer bank branches as a result of recent closures in towns across Buckinghamshire, on which many businesses rely, especially smaller businesses, make it difficult to have those valuable face-to-face interactions. And also payment methods that remain rooted in the operations of small businesses in the rural economy are also not being supported by these branch closures, and to some extent could be preventing growth. And every barometer, we also gauge local business views on topical issues. And this quarter, we asked local businesses about their international trade activity and whether they had tried to onshore their activity or even switched from, essentially switching from a foreign supplier to a UK-based supplier. And in total, 33 respondents import or export their goods and services internationally. 8 respondents only import, 7 only export, and 18 respondents import and export. And of those 33 in total, a slightly higher proportion import or export to the EU than non-EU countries, as shown in the graph. And in addition, only 8 have changed their importing or exporting activity over the last 3 years. And the reasons as to why they changed their import or export activity were attributed to the additional costs and red tape. There's also the client demand, including EU customers looking to source from within the EU. But there's also a changing supply chain and a need to diversify their portfolio, and also to source suppliers that facilitate recycling in order to reduce their carbon footprint. 6 respondents have already onshored, so switching from a foreign to a UK-based supplier. However, no respondents from the barometer survey have plans to switch. Of those that onshored, reasons for doing so included getting more control over their supply chain, also having that supply flexibility and price stability. However, the initial inefficiency was countered as onshoring was introduced. And while there was recognition that onshoring leads to improved quality and sustainability, reasons for not doing so included a lack of economic incentive linked to higher costs, a lack of suitable suppliers and qualified workers, and also the import regulations that have been introduced following Brexit as well. And this is a really important area that we'll continue to monitor, and which Buckinghamshire Business First will continue to provide support for local businesses. And I just want to also say that to close, the full report can be downloaded from the Observatory website, which my colleague Caroline has already gone through with you. And we also expect to undertake the next Business Barometer survey in the spring. Thank you very much for listening to the results. If you have any questions, I think quite a lot have been left in the chat. I'll hand back to Philippa.
Okay, so let's kick off with a few of the questions in the chat. We can put the slide deck down, I think, now, so that we can see each other's faces, if that's okay, Caroline or James or Paula. So in the chat, there's a question about supply chain. And actually, do we know anything around how supply chains from the Middle East are being affected by the current challenges? Have we got any data flowing through yet? Not sure, James, whether that came out in the detailed comments.
And it's around the shipping lanes, isn't it, as opposed to suppliers?
Yeah. But so. Yeah, for the barometer, the survey was conducted in the last quarter of 2023. So the recent rise in tensions has become more prominent in the last month or so. Just from just reading the commentary, businesses are worried about that because this could, it could, considering that we had supply chain issues during the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we could expect that these issues might re-emerge. However, it depends on, I guess, the suppliers that people use and also what measures are undertaken to reduce further, to reduce the situation getting worse, because some shipping routes have changed, so we might expect some delays in timeframes. But it's very difficult to predict.
And there's various narratives, isn't there, out there in the press. One that we might see fuel prices going down because fuel that would normally come from the States and go through through the Middle East, now they may choose to try and offload it into Europe rather than going the expensive route. So we might see something happening there. And actually, we're already picking up the delay in lead times for quite a lot of critical supplies for businesses. So anybody on the call experiencing real challenges with that supply chain? Okay. Yvette, did you want to come in and just let us know how it compares to your FSB findings over the last quarter? Has it got the same sense in it in terms of how it is for businesses?
Bear with me, I will just look at the headlines because I just stuck those down somewhere. So, or not, as the case may be, because it's not showing me now. So what's come up is that confidence fell back by minus 15 points in Q4, where it had been minus 8 points in Q3. 2 in 5 small firms are saying that their revenue fell in Q4. Only 1 in 3 saw an increase. A lot of them are bracing for the contraction in the size of their business over the next 12 months. And a quarter of exporters grew their export volumes over Q4, but a third reported a fall. So it's not dissimilar to what you've been talking about. I mean, because we are an economy of SMEs, I always find that we're very representative of what comes out of the FSB. But I also know bucks often will grow more quickly and more sustainably, whereas other areas don't. So I often think that's down to the hard work that you guys do at BBF in supporting businesses and making sure they're signposted to places. But I think I don't know if anybody else saw it, but there's a front page, I can't remember if it's the Times or the Telegraph this morning, is warning that something like 50,000 businesses are on the brink of financial collapse because of access to cash flow, etc. And obviously, when people see that, it starts to make other people worried. So whilst there might not be truth, we know what happens when we get this feeling of going around. I was talking to somebody earlier today who said that the flow of deals is reducing considerably, whether it's angel investment or going up to VC at the moment, because people just want to sit and wait to see what happens on March the 6th. And with an election happening as well, that's causing some issues. So it'd be interesting to see how the next barometer reflects, the budget coming into play, etc. I always take as a really good bellwether for the country. So I do point the FSB people in the direction of your observatory, because it's one of the few that is actually around that gives us really good information. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And Caroline, just sticking with that point for a second, there's a wide variety of people on this call, and actually some will be looking in because they just like to learn about the general state of the economy that they're trading within. But actually, I always think it's one of the best kept secrets, the observatory, because it can support businesses with things like planning applications, or where you're trying to make an argument that what you're doing is contributing to the economy where there might be a gap or something. Do you want to talk a little about the variety of uses for the data that you produce?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, we try and make the information that we put on the observatory as easy to access as possible, because we're conscious that we have a huge range of people wanting to use information for different purposes, whether that's people involved with economic development policy and strategy from that perspective, but also from a more operational view, if you're trying to argue a case for a planning application or a funding bid, maybe you're applying for innovation funding, for example. You should be able to find some type of information that you might need to put into those kind of applications, but also to find a bit more information about different sectors of the economy and firms operating within different sectors of the economy. What we try and do is any information that's publicly available, we will signpost to it from the observatory. So to give an example, nationally there is a directory of all companies involved in the computer games industry, and that's mapped onto an interactive map. So we have a link to that map from the observatory, so anybody wishing to understand who within Buckinghamshire is operating within that sector can easily click on that map and find that information. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit more of a flavour, but I think the best thing to do is go into the site yourself and have a play around and see what's there really. But also we really welcome feedback, and we really are always looking to review the type of content that we're including on the site. So if there's something that you can't find, just drop us an email, and either we can direct you to where it is, or it may be something that we can consider adding in the future.
Yeah, and it I mean, there's very few people that won't, I don't know, even if you're in a conversation with a bank about funding, even if you're trying to make a proposition to a new partner or a new trading arrangement, where you either want to understand a little bit more about who your competitors might be in the county, you might want to understand a little bit more about what gaps there are that your organisation is going to fill. So if we think about tourism and hospitality as an example, that's a sector where there's quite a lot of information about how many businesses are in that sector, what information we've got around the gaps in the offering in Buckinghamshire. So by hook or by crook, I think businesses can benefit from understanding the data that's available. David, just want to bring you in for a second, because that comment about big businesses being able to respond to the opportunities of AI more effectively than small businesses. So I hear two narratives, and actually small businesses were very agile. We're quite quick to make decisions. We don't have great big tankers to turn around when we come to look at AI. Is that your feeling when you're working with businesses, that the smaller businesses are struggling to adopt some of these new tools?
I think they use them in a quite constrained way, if you like. It's got to be provided for them, because you're using AI is one thing. Actually building your own AI tools and own AI capability is just enormous. It's £1 million is the entry price to get into actually building AI, but a one-man business can use a tool that's got AI built in it. So it's about using the right tools in the right way.
And Amanda, all the data and research that you're doing out there, which is across a really broad spectrum of things, how does it feel from your perspective in terms of what's going on out there?
Sorry, I was distracted by looking at the observatory website, and I'm looking at happiness across Bucks. Sorry.
That's the trouble. You get sucked in.
Yeah, it's a difficult one actually, and I haven't worked on a local client who's doing that kind of work at the moment, so my stuff is kind of much more nationwide. And yeah, it would from obviously I don't have it at a big level, but at a granular level there is still that fear around. Everyone's still a bit, it's a little bit hairy because no one knows what's happening, therefore everyone is kind of holding back a little.
Yeah. And Helen, you're in the world of space, business, office space, and etc. How are you finding it with your sort of product, as it were, and take up?
Hi there, everyone. Sorry for a bit of background noise. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
It's a bit of a tale of two worlds, to be honest. We're finding we're getting a positive amount of interest from smaller businesses, actually, but then the block that a lot of them have is they're moving from co-working or the flex sector into their first sort of proper office, as it were, and a lot of them are flat rated on the VAT scheme, so they're not used to being able to pay VAT, and unfortunately that's just, as you'll know, that's not something we can circumnavigate, so we have to sort of educate people into the costs around property. But there are people that want to expand their business and want to take the leap. The further we get up the chain, the larger SMEs, we're finding a huge reluctance to make decisions. There's people that definitely need to upsize or potentially want to downsize, but it's almost better the devil you know. And so they are sticking fast because nobody feels confident enough to make that decision. And nobody wants to be the person that makes a real estate decision, which, let's face it, has an impact for sort of, 3 to 5 to 10 years, even depending on the length of lease entered into. So we position ourselves very much as sort of approachable, flexible hosts of the property we manage. But it's difficult. No one wants to make a decision.
Yeah. Yvette.
On the AI, I'm quite concerned that we're going to see a lot of people jumping in with, let me teach you how to do AI for your business in something that's not regulated. And I've got no idea how we can make sure that businesses know when someone's just studied it for an hour and set their stall out, and can potentially lead them into all sorts of GDPR and copyright issues, etc. And that's something that's, because we've seen that with mental health training, etc., where people have done a course to train it and then set their stalls out to be a trainer. And I can see David nodding. So that's one thing that I'm really concerned about. And the other thing that's been fed back quite a bit recently is that if you want to grow into a space, especially if you need a space where you need a bit of dirty space to make stuff, as well as the office space, etc., that's becoming difficult to find again and is expensive. And I don't know if we've got any more evidence around that, because the more evidence I get, the more I can feed it back.
So, Caroline, in terms of the types of space that's available and the where do we perceive the shortages are?
That's a big question.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something that is definitely something we want to look into further and really be able to understand better. And we have various sources that we hope to be able to use to do that. So yeah, at the moment I can't really answer, but it's definitely an area that we're seeking to understand better.
And it's ever changing, isn't it? 6-7 years ago there was a recognised shortage of clean room space across our geography and actually up across the whole of the arc. But I think I was reading last week now that we've got a surplus of clean room space, where that the market has caught up and actually as the market will cashing in on a shortage and putting supply there. And you're right, Yvette, we hear from a lot of businesses that it's the dirty manufacture that's actually becoming harder and harder to find accommodation for. Anybody else like to feed in?
I noticed that someone's said, can we rely on LinkedIn to find AI training from recommended people? I don't know if you've got a view on that, but I said probably not, because that's where people set their stalls out.
What we've been to do within Buckinghamshire Business First is we had a summit down in Wickham. We are doing some AI power hours over the next couple of months. We had a session where we spoke with Steve Baker about AI, and equally some of that, how is it going to be, how are you going to put rules around it? How are we all going to know how far we can go? And one of his comments were, the government is not going to legislate. This thing is growing quicker than Topsy. But actually what we'll start to find is insurance companies will or won't insure certain improvements activities, like your driverless cars and things like that. The insurance market will decree how far some of this goes. And other than that, I think it's about all of us trying to share best practice with each other. And in the safe environment that is BBF, you will be picking up a lot of personal testimonials about, well, we tried this, it didn't work, or we tried that. And as I said at our AGM, we are just like any other company. We've got a team of 50 people. And as we put our toe into the AI world, it was very quickly a question of, well, we need to pull together a little bit of a policy here about how our staff work with it. Not that we're not going to stop it in any way, shape or form, but we need to understand the boundaries within we can work because of the safety element of our IP and various other bits. So I think it's really important in that world to stay networked and to hear what's going on with other businesses. And I think certainly we're very happy to share any of our learning so far. It won't be perfect, but it'll help people get on the next step. Giles, you've got your hand up.
Oh yeah, I was just going to feedback from our perspective, really, just in terms of the planning system, or the lack of it at the moment. It's obviously having a massive impact on our business in terms of house building, but I think wider than that, just in terms of the businesses that we look after from a project management point of view as well. They want certainty to be able to grow their businesses. And when the planning system is unable to provide that, it must be having a massive impact, not just in Buckinghamshire, but UK based. One of our clients in a different area, they've waited over a year now for a planning application. They've invested probably £300,000 and still have absolutely no certainty what's happening for them. If that doesn't come off, they've got an option over that land. If that doesn't come off, they're sort of back to square one. And having started a sort of property search with a big investment, it's really tough. And we've seen the same in Buckinghamshire. We represent clients here as well, and it's taken similar periods to get through the planning system, even on sites where it's had outline planning permission previously. It's not great for UK PLC, I don't think.
No, and it puts a real limiter on the accelerator, doesn't it? It's that.
Yeah, and sadly, I see nothing coming forward that gives us any hope that anything's going to improve anytime soon. Sadly.
And you weren't buoyed by the autumn statement where we now have this new system on fees that if it's not done within a certain time, and
I'll be staggered if it makes any difference whatsoever. I'm afraid. I'm a massive advocate for increasing planning fees significantly. I think any business that you speak to that's involved with planning would happily pay probably 4 or 5 times the amount for a planning application if somebody would actually get on and deal with it. So I do get frustrated when you speak to Buckinghamshire Council and they're looking at a £1 million deficit in their planning department, and the answer is to cut all the services, because I think the money's out there to pay for it if they find a way of getting it.
If they can do the service. Caroline, have you got any interesting stats on planning or number of new builds or anything planning related?
The observatory, we do have a link to the latest house build stats and a link to the planning application stats as well. But I think a lot of it's hidden within that data. So I think the stats are measuring one thing, whereas the views we're hearing from businesses are often in that pre-application phase, which isn't necessarily counted in the statistics. So this is the value of hearing the on-the-ground intelligence to really bring to light the severity of this issue and the barrier that it's causing.
Mm.
And interesting to hear that it's nationwide as well, because it's definitely something that's being raised in Buckinghamshire very frequently at the moment.
Yeah, and I think Yvette, you put into the chat that lack of planning staff nationally is an issue. I think the narrative has changed slightly in Buckinghamshire lately, in terms of, I think the complement of staff is almost there, if not there now. So it'll be interesting to see how it changes. Anybody else got input around the planning or the reality of that as a barrier to growth?
Just to say from my side, Philippa, that at the hotel, we've obviously got a grade 2 listed building, which is Hallwood House. I've just completed some works on the gatehouse at the top of the road that was obviously with the listed building consent. Very, very slow process, responsiveness wise, even to clear conditions and things like that, which doesn't make it easy. And a separate planning application that's gone in for a staff block to allow, I guess, me to increase the capacity of what we can offer at the hotel. That has been going on, I'm going to say, since not the application being submitted, but discussions with council, pre-planning advice, heritage advice, and all of that, since probably the end of 2022. And I mean, there's no rhyme or reason why they come back with some of the feedback that they do, and I don't mean that in a detrimental way, but it's detrimental to the business, the growth opportunity that is, you know, here at Hallwood House, probably running about 50% occupancy, probably have about 14 bedrooms of the hotel used by staff because we're very remote over here, so there is no public transport to get here, so that's the only means of growing the offering and being able to deliver, you know, what we're selling, you know, as Hallwood House. And I think it's obviously disappointed to hear on you know, the residential side, but commercially as well, there doesn't seem to be any appetite for you know, allowing businesses to grow. So I'm sure we'll just have to deal with it and figure out, you know, how to make it work best, but it's workarounds rather than, you know, being able to grow the business for the betterment of the whole sort of community, I guess, you know, and the wider county.
Giles, did you want to come back in?
I was just going to give you a very quick example. So we've got a client at the moment that they've invested £21 million in an extension to their facility. It's an engineering business that exports around the world. And their pre-commencement condition was submitted in March. I think we got it signed off in December. You know, the building is nearly built now and it will practically complete in February. It's it's really not working.
And what we see at BBF is business people make decisions quite quickly and they want to move quite quickly, you know, and it actually saps the energy out of a lot of these investments, that the sort of speed. Yvette, did you want to come back in? Your hand is still up, but I think it's a legacy.
No, it is a legacy. Sorry, it didn't let me to put it up. No, it won't let me. But I would say that Corinne's experience, I keep hearing this when there's a heritage aspect, and I think there's not the breadth of knowledge needed. So you do get a lot of weird questions coming back, and that just delays the whole process. And then you end up with one organisation saying it's nothing to do with us, it's somebody else, and vice versa, and that's obviously going to make it a lot worse.
I mean, I have to say, in Heritage's defence, that my experience with Heritage earlier in the process, because I only acquired the property in September 2019, so maybe around the end of 2020 when we were planning bits for the internal sort of areas of the hotel, they were very, very good. And although it was still, you know, not an 8-week response, it was maybe 10 weeks at the time, I got, you know, very sort of very good sort of feedback, and, you know, I worked quite closely with them. They came in and sort of appreciated how we've done stuff within the hotel. That's all linked because of the, you know, physical link to the manor house itself. But that part of it actually was really good. It's these other two applications more recently. Like I said, maybe from the end of 2022, I think things have just really gone downhill across the board. And it's yeah, when the two departments don't talk to each other, and we've had that within this application, that doesn't help either. Or you have someone else picking up, you know, work that was started by a different officer within whichever department. It just doesn't bode well for, you know, efficiencies. And as you said, sort of as an independent owner, I think I like to make decisions quite quickly, especially when I've got, you know, the funds available to do something now. In 6 months, they'll probably be used for something else, whether that's within Hallwood House or, you know, outside. But it's frustrating from that perspective, for sure.
Okay. What was done in sort of November, December time, we just got the benefit of the autumn statement, so we knew what was going to be in it, and we probably hadn't all gone away and worked out what the actual implications of it were. So we're picking up quite a lot of feedback around the impact of the minimum wage, because, as most businesses will tell you, it not only impacts on those who are on minimum wage, but you then have to give some due reverence to the fact that the differentials between wage bands are eroded, and so you drive payroll inflation up through the various tiers. Anybody got any comments in terms of the minimum wage impact on their business model, or how it's affecting them thinking about the future? We're all cruising around that one at the moment.
I can just give you again a little bit of feedback that when it's all from my experience at Hallwood House and where we were, and a lot of, you know, staff on minimum wage when I acquired the property. Obviously we've had COVID and everything else since, but all of a sudden, with the increase in just the last 3 or 4 years, I mean, we're on a completely different level of staff sort of salaries annually, and I get it and I understand it, but I think everyone, government wise, is looking solely at the staff, which is absolutely the right thing to do, because there is a cost of living crisis, but then they don't offer any reprieve back to the businesses. And I think that's the biggest thing I found. So yes, I'm in it for the long run. I want to develop Hallwood. I want to, you know, do what I can to you know, make it profitable, and it is profitable, but there has to be some give and take on trying to support both ends of the spectrum, from, you know, the member of the team member on whoever is cleaning rooms or you know, garden in the grounds, to actually making the business viable and making it more appealing to, you know, invest into a staff block to grow the business, to maybe build another extension to the spa or whatever it might be. And I think it gets focused at one end and not the other. So the impact from, you know, the latest increase in April adds, I don't know, £50,000 to my payroll bill for the year, and everyone else that's on an increment of, obviously, the lowest team member on salary wise has to then have a, you know, an equivalent or a proportionate
increase. Yeah, very challenging. Okay,
yeah.
so I'm really conscious that we're running into our last minute. I'd just like to say thank you very much to all of you for attending. Your input is always useful and sort of informs our thinking about what's important to you. We've got a couple of programs currently running within Buckinghamshire Business First. One is the growth program, which can support businesses with real help and support that will help you towards innovation, growth, generally moving your strategy for your business on. And we also have the net zero program, which will help any business that's thinking of lowering its carbon emissions, which obviously, I don't even have to say obviously, but huge impact there in terms of being able to lower your energy bills, which is really quite a useful thing to be doing at this particular point in time. So if I've used just a couple of seconds, growth program, you don't lose anything by just calling in and we'll talk you through it. And net zero, you know, looking at that carbon reduction journey for your business and how you get through it. So 12 o'clock on the nail. Thank you all very much. I'm sure Caroline will add all those names to our distribution list for the Data Observatory, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.